Another jobs and retired. He's getting jobs and retiring. So I am going to turn it over to Dr. Joe, and he can start the program and let you know what this is all about. And we're excited for the little ones that are here to be recognized. So, Dr. Joe.
Thank you for having us. Uh, if everybody sit down for, can you hear me?
There we go.
I think that works. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Good evening. It's always a pleasure for me to come to Hawthorne. I spent 13 wonderful years here, and we had a great board. We still do probably, and great administrative team. And you see all the new buildings was because of the community supported us and passed the bond issue to build them. We asked for, I think we spent over $100 million building new buildings and remodeling. We did this building, this room here as well. So I have a lot of good memories. The purpose for tonight is, I don't know, let me start. When I was in another school district in Michigan, the board liked me a lot one time and they gave me a very big raise. And I said, well, I got to do something. So I took half of my raise and started Most Improved Award, my wife's name and myself. By the way, this is my beautiful bride of 55 years, soon be 56. And we started that for Most Improved Award. So when I came here, after my first year, I put some money and I started here. And then we also, meanwhile, we lost our son, David. So the scholarship is under his name, David Yom Tov Most Improved Award. David was a student, young man who always challenged me that you don't do enough for the kids. No matter what I said, he always had a better idea, especially improving the student achievement. And that's why we have a name, and we are going celebrate, ask the kids to come read if they want to read. We don't force anybody to read their things. And about 7 o'clock, when the board originally start, we're going to call the name of each kids, and they're going to get a certificate, they're going to get a little bit of money, and they're going to get a book. The book we have about our son David, who my wife authored. I want to also, and I see a very diverse group here. One time when I was applying for a job, a person asked me, what do you know about diversity? I said, I'm diversity squared. Not only I'm Persian, I'm also Jewish Persian. And that's so good to see the diverse group here. And my message to the kids here is, I want you to listen, kids, everybody. I came to this country with $200 in my pocket. I couldn't speak any English. And I consider myself the American dream to become whatever you want to become. And that's why we have this scholarship. And I tell you more about what you're going to do with the money when we get there. So you cannot spend it for toys or boxes or those things. But we'll talk about that later. We're going to ask for volunteers to come and read what they wrote, the reason they want to be Most Improved Award. Who wants to volunteer? And I don't want to see all of the 12 hands at the same time. One would do. I see one right there. Come on. Introduce yourself and read your story for us.
My name is Candela Arregui.
You want me to hold this for you?
My my name is Candela, and this is my first and sadly last year here at Hawthorne Middle School North. I really enjoyed my short experience in this amazing school. I wish I had been here long ago. However, I was born in China. I was soon brought to Spain to be raised, making my first language Spanish. I came to the United States in 7th grade. It has been a difficult road for me. I think it's good to use words like this, but I don't like to compare myself to others because everyone is different. I only compare myself to myself. I just believe that some people improve personally, like I feel I have. I think I'm Hawthorne's. I learned a whole new language when coming here, and I also learned the educational system works in this how the educational system works here in this country. When I first came to this country, the thing I was most afraid of was the language. I knew nothing about it, just the basics. They had taught me. I felt lost. I couldn't understand a thing that people were saying. I didn't know anyone, so I watched TV. Something that was really helpful my understanding. But I still had to learn how to write and write. All these factors in school. I felt really welcome to Hawthorne Middle North, even if it was hard to understand. But I got used to the English and really quickly with the help of my teachers and classmates. In 4 months, I could talk well with my friends and teachers, but I was reading took more time. From the start, I knew grammatical errors were something that I couldn't avoid. But even that is getting better. What surprised me was the reading. It took me longer than expected. When I read Spanish or French, but in English, I was stuck and really had struggled to get through. But soon the books became easier to advance with the reading. I have finally accomplished the most important writing and understanding. I also learned how the educational system works here at the United States. At first, it was harder. I suddenly had to do map, work, and access. I was really confused. It made me really it was something I was used to on computers. It made me really uncomfortable. But not only did it, but everything. Here I had to work, have a locker, use a computer all the time. I had to use my culture. After all, I still fear the test because they mean a lot here. But I'm sure that if I give them more time, I'll get used to it. In conclusion, I think I'm Hawthorne's. I put this past couple working on learning a new language, higher education. Aside from all the new things, I also accomplished my goal, my grades. Something I thought impossible in this country where everything was. But only I can put my in place. I know my limits myself. I now know that I can do anything my mind to it. Thank you for your.
Who is next?
Not me.
Oh. All right. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
I got my new next profession. Fixing up mics. A little bit higher.
That's okay. On January 11, 2016, I came to the United States with my family in search of a better education for my brother and I. 3 days after, my first day of school came and I was extremely nervous because I was in a school full of people my age who spoke a different language that I barely knew. I had to work very hard to learn the language and coursework, and I believe in the past 3 years I've improved a lot socially and academically. The past 2 years haven't been the easiest, especially academic-wise, but I know I'm the most improved because of how hard I've worked and because of the teachers at Hawthorne care so much about their students. I remember very well how hard 6th grade was for me and how fast my heart would race every morning before. On the inside, I was very thankful for all the teachers who helped me out and dedicated their time to me, but I felt lost and confused in most of my classes. I barely talked to any other students because I was nervous and I felt like I would say something that made me look foolish or different. In 7th grade, I realized how much I had advanced in my English skills and how I could actually understand what my teachers were saying. Now that I'm not saying 7th grade was easy, but it wasn't nearly as hard as 6th grade. Towards the end of 7th grade, I could finally keep some steady B's, and I started to dedicate more time to my education because I could finally do things on my own. From there on, it all kept getting better, and I made friends, and I had a lunch table where I felt like I belonged. Now that I am in 8th grade, I fully understand my academic classes, and I try my hardest in every single assignment. I have learned to ask my teachers for help, and they always make time for me so that I know what I'm doing. I know that I still have a lot to learn, but I feel like I am the most improved because of how far I've come in middle school. I would have never made so much academic progress as I did without the help, support, and attention from my teachers and family members.
They call me Jose. I'm Latino. They adopted me. Come on. Brave guy like that. Wow. Is that okay? Getting better.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna steal.
I've grown so much this year, a whole 3 inches. But in math, I've grown a lot more, 3 inches. I'm trying to do more than I'm supposed to. I tried to do 25 minutes of math a day, keep improving. When I was in kindergarten, I barely knew how to group, but now I'm a master at it. I've also improved in writing. I've grown in reading because I read for 40 minutes a day. Writing, I've grown a lot because I write full paragraphs. When I write out the answers to my problems, I use full sentences. I think I've grown head to toe, literally.
Give it to me when you come back. Thank you.
Hi, I am Dre. I have autism and I used to have a hard time talking to kids. I had Miss Travis to help me. I also showed growth in math, health, and civics. I felt more interested in making friends and felt a lot calmer. I am a lot more flexible. Call it polite things to go, and I had learned from my mistakes and learned what's right or wrong. 5th grade, there were 2 nice boys who helped me be a better friend. The year I used to not handle being in the cafeteria proves I had grown through the year. I always used to cry and scream and yell and to hide under Miss Travis's table. Always used to throw a fit over little deals. I wasn't able to manage my anger or solve problems on my own. I used to sit by myself in the cafeteria with nobody. I had a hard time with nobody. I had a hard time making friends, and for headphones, I have gotten better at letting people help me because I learned it's okay to ask for help. Because of my changes, I am no longer a lop. I am in classes.
All right. Great job. Great job. Okay. Go ahead. No, you got it. I thought I had this. Hey. Come to here, buddy.
3rd grade, I
messy desk and the projects we were doing. Super hard to find my things in my desk. I had papers everywhere and folders that were misplaced. I was not able to easily find my work, which slowed me down during the school day. I was very distracted with the people around me. During math class, I struggled to understand the different concepts with my multiplication facts. The next year in fourth grade, I became more involved during the class day. I worked on focusing more on the teacher and what we were learning in class. I still had a messy desk, but made the effort to clean and organize it more often. I focused on studying my multiplication facts and more often and worked very hard at learning them. I felt that I was behind in art class because I was unable to keep myself focused. In the year fourth grade, I have taken a lot of time to make the extra effort to get completely caught up. Now I know my multiplication facts and I'm able to use them in math whenever I need to. This year I have worked hard with Miss Brent to keep all of my folders and papers and all of the time. In art, I have been much better staying focused, completing my art projects on. Over the past 3 years, I have had a lot of help in making the improvements I have. My parents have always been there to keep me with my homework and make sure I have all the things necessary. They saw that I was struggling with math and have done everything they can to help me grow, including getting me a math. And my teachers have also helped me. This year, Ms. Brandt has helped me every day with my math skills. She has always offers me when I don't understand what we are learning. My plan to keep growth in middle school is always to ask for help when I need it and to work hard at keeping all of my papers and folders in order and all of the time. I will use my assignment notebook in every class to keep my homework and assignments organized. My goal is to be an honest, kind student who can survive the torture of middle school.
Oh. Oh. All right, can you speak to here, right in here?
My name is Christian. I am in second grade. My teacher is Miss Wagner. In the last 3 years, I have learned a lot. When I was in kindergarten, I didn't speak English very well. I spoke Spanish. I learned how to read English and Spanish. My sister was teaching me reading English. My brother also helped me with my English. In first grade, my teacher was Mrs. Brzezinski. She taught me how to tell time. She always helped me with math. In second grade, I became a better reader in both English and Spanish. I also learned geometrical shapes. The teachers helped me were Mrs. Rice, Mrs. Nick, and Miss Wagner. I will keep practicing to get better. I have a mom and dad who always helps me with my homework and help me do my best.
All right. Good job. Looking nice. Anybody else? We have 12 candidates. You already done yours. Yeah.
Hi.
How are you?
Obviously, good to see you again.
Is that good?
Yeah. Let's start from all the way back to second grade. In second grade, I was a kid who was somewhat kind of lost. I wasn't those students who were so smart or popular. Not until that fall of 2013 is when I started going to this ELA class that I knew I went every day. At first, I didn't know anyone who was in my class, but then as I kept going, I met some kids and made some friends. As the year passed, I got better at things I wasn't good at until it was that last day of school, and I remember being so happy with all my progress. After our summer break, I was so happy that when I started third grade, I used all my progress as a reminder in my head. As I went into third grade, I felt proud, and every day I went into that class and I felt as a part of me each day would change. It wasn't until May of 2014 that the biggest change in my life occurred. I finally didn't need extra help from my teachers from my ELA class. I was so happy at my house that I had joyful tears in my eyes because of all the progress I have made. Then it was already fourth grade and I was a little nervous, but that wasn't going to stop me. As the year went on, I was stressed and tired, but at the end, all of my teachers were happy and proud of me, and my whole family was also proud of me. And that was all I needed in my life. Finally, it was fifth grade, and I will admit I was very nervous, but as I met my teacher, Mrs. Pagoshnik, it wasn't that bad. And it turns out my teacher was super nice and friendly. As the months passed, I felt that I have made huge progress. It was now April, and I just can't wait to finish my path all the way from third grade to where I am now. And I am also ready for my path through middle school. This is why I deserve the David Yontum Hawthorne's Most Improved Student Award.
Junior got a very nice handwriting. Why they call you Junior? Is that your nickname? Mine is Nick. Dr. Joe is my nickname too. All right. Do we have anybody else? I think this young man wants to come. Come on. That's it.
My name is Rancy. I am grade 2, and my teacher is I deserve the Most Improved Student Award. I should receive this because when it was my first day of school, when it was my first day in the school, I was shy. And then when it was the scavenger hunt, I had a partner, and then we became BFFs. In the past 3 years, I have grown in many ways. I learned English. I learned people in America in this school. My plan as I continue to watch on is to make a lot of friends and work hard. Please pick me for this award because I am kind and work hard.
Bravo. sit down, honey. Anybody else? Let me share a couple of stories with you, 2 or 3 of them. The first time we established a kid about this high was Michael Johnson. He saw me, he says, I'm going to get one of those. He wrote me a letter. I said, why don't you come to the board meeting? He did. He got one. Nobody. Not because of the money, but because of the idea of it. Last year we were at Walmart right here. We were having a Subway. Subway's healthy, right? Not too bad. No mayonnaise, not bad. Veggie. The lady says, are you a principal at Hawthorne? So we're not yet. I was superintendent. I never made it to principal. But she says, you gave my daughter this Improve Award. So the story is that hopefully this will be meaning for all of you about going to college. I could tell you a story after story. When I went back to Nixon, I went back to work and back. One of the 12th graders remember me. I said, no, I was years, but I used to go there every year. You know, you used to do a spawn. 50 years to mature right. About 2 years. Or when you gave me the US spawn, grandfather also bought US spawn. They are maturing right now. I'm going to go to Paris State College for money to buy books. So there is a hope for everyone. By the way, I want to tell you that I thank the administrators and supporting us every year. Couldn't be in better. Not because of me, because of the staff and more than that. It's a great place to be, and 2 minutes before I start giving the award. Do you have any questions? Anybody else wants to read? Got a few minutes. You don't have a quorum yet.
Oh, yeah.
You have a quorum. They're around somewhere.
Okay, come on. Okay.
King to no. These are words I couldn't read in 2nd grade. I strongly believe that I deserve the David Yamtu Hawthorne's Most Improved Student Award. I have grown tremendously in the last 3 years in and out of school. Overcoming the speech issue, at the same time, learning how to read was one of the hardest obstacles I had to overcome during this time. I had many people helping me and encouraging me. I am still working to overcome my obstacles and improve the skills I will need in my future. In the last 3 years, I firmly believe I've improved greatly. In 2nd grade, I struggled to read even the simplest of words. I had trouble in spelling because I couldn't read. When I started to study how to spell new words, I found it getting easier for me. This year, I was proud because I finally ended my streaks of 2s and got a 3 in spelling on my report card. In this time period, I also grown so much in my ability to read. I got pulled out in the hallway to relearn my phonics and how to read. I've been working hard since then to raise my MAP score up from a 170. My work paid off, and I've received a 226 on my last reading math test. Once I learned how to read, I loved it. I read almost every day on the bus because I can't put my book down.
Now I read interesting and challenging books like Harry Potter. A lot of people helped me in the last 3 years. Mrs. Sabin and Mr. Smart are two great and supportive teachers. Mrs. Sabin was very positive and she never made me feel dumb. Mr. Smart taught me how to do things instead of just giving me the answer. Mrs. Burning had also played a big role in helping me to improve my speech. She made learning fun with challenges and board games. Finally, in 4th grade, I was able to say my R's. My family also helped me so much during the last 3 years. In my younger years, my parents would read me novels to expose me to higher vocabulary. My parents would check my homework and help me if I did not get it. Lastly, my tutor, Miss Jody, believed in me and has been there every step of the way. I'm still working to improve everything I can. One way I'm working to improve is to read harder books. Doing this will expand my vocabulary. It will also help me become a better writer, since I love writing stories. Another way that I can become a better student is to work on my time management. I use things like assignment notebooks or planners so it can help me manage my time in and out of school. For example, if I have a test coming up, I would plan out what day I would make flashcards and when I would study. So I'm also trying to learn how to speak in front of an audience. I continue to practice speaking in front of an audience. For example, I do plays. Having the confidence to speak in front of others will help me become a better leader. Hopefully you understand the challenges I've faced and truly see how much I've improved during the last 3 years. By overcoming my reading and speech problems, I am confident that I can face any obstacle that comes my way in the future. The growth I've made would not have been possible without the support from my teachers, family, and tutor. It has been nice to see hard work pay off, so I'm going to continue to better myself for years to come. Taking the opportunity to look at my journey makes me extremely proud of myself. I would be honored if I was chosen to receive the David Young Toombs Hawthorne's Most Improved Student Award.
Wow. That was great. Are you ready, or I could say a few more words?
We are ready. We have board members out there. Wes.
Is Jason coming?
He's
We did that to you first. Chair.
I'll call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could I have the roll call, please?
Sonali?
Huh?
Jason's here. He was out working with Dimitri.
Oh, he's there. Right here. Oh, there he is.
If Dimitri wants to make a stop here, mine's not hooking up either.
Here. Jason, Julie Simpson. Robin
Here. Here.
Wes Pullen here. Matt Jacobs.
Here.
Sonali Patel.
Here.
Jeff Bard.
Oh, you have to call him in.
Whoops. Is it too late to get Dimitri to help me with this?
Oh, maybe when we break.
Okay.
After that, we
It's
can
not
get-
connecting to the internet.
Jeff, are you there? Yes. Oh, I don't have the.
You want?
Do you need his phone number?
I haven't looked yet.
No, he wanted the landline number. So that's different.
No.
Yeah, that makes a big difference in the call.
Yeah. Share your iPad for now.
Okay.
I got nothing.
Hello?
Jeff, you here?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay. All board members are present, Jeff by phone. We have the recognition today of our most improved students, and we've already heard their essays that they had written, and it is amazing how far you guys have come. Congratulations to all of you on all your hard work, and thank you to all our teachers and staff who has helped in getting you to that journey. Go ahead.
Not me.
No.
I don't know.
That's what we're going to do. Going to ask each building principal come and call the name of the students. Then, by the way, I'm missing a book. Did somebody borrow a book? I want to make sure that. Thank you. And we're going to ask the board president to join us, and Mr. Brown also, you could join us. My wife would give you a book. Mr. Brown would give you, Superintendent Brown give you the writing. Our board president would give you a certificate, and I give you a check. Now, it's a small check, but I want you to remember, I ask a question. I want you to remember the answer. The question is, what are you going to do with the check? And I give you the answer, okay? The answer is, I'm going to deposit it in my saving account. So what, the kids who are getting certificate or getting the award, what are you going to do with the check? We get it there. Okay. We start with elementary in North. Elementary North. Yeah. Okay. Second grade.
Yes. Elementary North is proud to congratulate Miss Elizabeth Servin.
Shake her hand.
There you go.
Shake his hand.
Elizabeth can show everybody how to do it.
And shake everybody's board members. Yeah. All right.
Good job.
Congratulations.
All right.
And we're also, Elementary North is also proud to recognize Mr. Trey Miller.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Good job. Town line.
Way to go.
Town line. Second grade.
I'm very proud to announce second grade most improved, Ben Sasson.
Yes, you're right. All right. What are you going to do with the check?
To put it in my savings account.
All right. You're so good. Big hand now.
Yeah, buddy.
Layla.
I'm
Congratulations.
very proud to announce Layla Schumacher as fifth grade most of
Are you going with the check?
Put it in my savings account.
All right. That's okay.
Hi, Layla.
Do language.
Good job. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
It is my privilege to recognize Tony Lopez, a second grade student from dual language.
All right, that's okay.
We'd also like to recognize Diana Hernandez. I don't believe she's here today, but we will get that to her tomorrow.
Good job, Ben. Sorry, congratulations.
Great job, Tony.
Elementary South, second grade.
Good evening. We are so honored to award our second grader, Christian Gonzalez, from second grade.
Save it. That's good. But put it in the bank now. Don't save it at home.
Also from Elementary South, we are so proud of fifth grader, Daniel Nitz.
Good job.
Congratulations. All right, that's a good answer. Good answer. Thank you. Aspen?
Good job.
Good job, Dan. Way to go.
Second grade?
Second grade, we are proud to recognize the exceptional work of Joey Furcano.
I like that.
And at fifth grade, we want to recognize the exceptional work of Junior Flores.
Put it in my savings account.
Middle School North.
Way to go.
Good job.
Wow, she was so good. I just came back from China. I did last week. I was in Shanghai and a few other places. Suzhou.
Our recipient at Hawthorne Middle School North is Candela Aregi.
So what are you going to do with the check?
Save it.
Save it. All right. And Middle School South.
From Middle School South, congratulations to Arleth Arana.
What are you going to do with the check? Oh, great, great. Okay, sit down now. Let's give all of the recipients a big hand. Is it raining outside? We want to take a family picture with the kids, so we go to the hallway. Also, my wife would be more than happy to sign the book if they want to get she was the author. And I have 4 extra books. I don't know how to do that. I don't have enough for everyone, but we put it outside. Whoever pick it up, she'd be happy to sign it. I wanted 5 extra books. I want to just give you a little bit of update to the board I usually do. After May last year, I got married for the 3rd time, but the same woman. We had our anniversary. And then we went to Cuba, very interesting place, good to visit. For our honeymoon, we went to Alaska cruise last August. Then we visited California a couple of times. And then just came back from China. And I did something I never done before. There is a school system about 5 minutes from our house in Arizona. I went and signed up to be a substitute. So I told them I only want to teach math, but one day they needed somebody with a warm body, I suppose. So I taught Spanish and art. They pay very good. I pay to people who do the yard work for us about $20 an hour. You know how much I get paid for a sub? $14 an hour. That was such a big raise for me. But I did it for fun. Thank you very much, board members. It's always a pleasure to come back here. You have a great school system. And I want to add just a couple more comments. Fortunately, the fund have been coming because for our anniversary, we ask nobody to bring a gift. If they want to do something, donate money to the Most Improved Fund, and there were quite a bit of money came in, so we could continue this effort. Rather than getting gifts for this school for the kids. We do this through 2 other places. We do it in East Chicago, which I was there for 2 years. And then a school system that I started was Niles, Michigan. And I went there and thanked them for hiring me to start with. And make a dream coming true, and then we offer the scholarship for the seniors there. So again, thank you so much, and good luck to you. I know you have room challenges. I did too, and I think everything is working out. You got a great community and great staff.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Kids are going to college? Graduated yet? Very nice seeing you again.
See you. Thank you so much for coming. Good to see you again.
My pleasure.
Thanks for coming. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Give me a call sometime.
I will. It's so nice.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
I left $30 million. I want to see it back.
Let me know where it is. Thank you so much.
I think it was today.
Okay, sure.
Yep, I'm up. My email. Good. Thank you. Got it. Okay.
Ms. Denali, when it comes back to order, Jeff had said he couldn't hear very well. I said we'll try it again after the certificates are handed out. So.
See ya. Take care.
So if I was caught texting, I was texting
Is he still on or has he hung up?
I think he's still on, but he said I can't hear anything, and I said I think it's because they're doing that stuff.
You haven't changed, right?
When we resume the
Yeah, because we did test it before.
Yeah.
So
So when we resume the board work, if you can't hear them, we'll take it.
we'll resume our regular board meeting in a couple of minutes. Hello?
So that they don't.
It's on.
We're loud.
I mean, I wish they would have specified. I would have said it earlier. I like some of the kids, you know? Better than hearing half the other stuff we hear, right?
Yeah, I know. I saw it.
Oh,
that's the only reason why I'm saying it is I didn't notice that it was from earlier.
Was it announced to
Wait, anything about that?
Google. Mail. There we go.
You might make it clear when we get to this section. You might want to make it clear when we get down to this stuff on the keys and the just so people are aware if they're coming expecting a decision.
I parked in back because when I first pulled in, there was a tow truck waiting in that lot. And he pulled away without towing anybody, but I'm like, I'm out of here. That lot next door with there was an actual like flatbed tow truck waiting there when I pulled in, so I'm like, I think I'll go park in back. Okay.
I parked there with the bus.
I parked there too. Good luck with that. I'll give you a ride home. Should we move?
Because mine was turned off when I said
Is that who would tow it?
That's what you
I noticed the name of the towing company.
I just thought it was weird that a tow truck was sitting there. I was like, either he got a call that somebody's broken down and it's just...
Could we get the meeting to order again, please? Call the meeting to order.
Ready when you are.
I'm going to have to. I'm just trying to see if I can be loud enough right now.
Use that hammer.
You got the gavel.
Yeah, I know.
Go for it.
I think we're ready.
Can I get the meeting to order, please? Thank you. The first order of business is finance. It's the 2018-19 paper bid, 2018-19 prevailing wage, and resolution for transfer of funds to the working capital fund. This is for our summer projects. Oh, sorry. Does anybody from the public wishes to comment? Going one, twice, gone. Abe.
Yes, these were all discussion items at the last board meeting and are action items for approval tonight. In review for the paper bid, we are ordering 2,160 cases of paper for next year. We do use the majority of it. We are going to be utilizing PaperCut software to be able to measure and minimize usage going forward.
Can't be closed.
The recommendation is that we approve Midland Paper to provide this year's supply of paper to our district. The total cost is $56,583.60.
I'm sorry, Jeff said he still can't hear anything.
Even when we are talking directly into our mics, you can't hear us, Jeff? Jeff?
We can't hear Jeff.
Andrew?
It keeps cutting in and out whenever someone talks.
Whenever someone talks, you keep cutting in and out? Okay. Just give us a minute to see.
Jeff, can you hear me right now?
That'd be a no.
I don't know. I'm married, so this is at home. I mean, I get to say no.
It cuts out.
Cuts out. Dimitri, dude, it's cutting in and out, he says.
Okay, we are going to try again. So hopefully if you don't hear us or if you get cut in and out, just let us know. We'll let Abe finish a couple of topics and we'll get from there.
Great, thank you. The next item is the Prevailing Wage Act.
Just a second. Does anybody have any questions regarding the paper bid? And we are still doing this paper bid in cooperative with the Green Oaks, right?
That is correct. They have a small fraction.
Sorry?
Oak Grove School.
Oak Grove, sorry. Yeah.
They have a small fraction.
Okay.
Okay. The next item is the Prevailing Wage Resolution. The recommendation is that we comply with the Prevailing Wage Act. It's done annually, fairly administrative in nature. Any questions related to that? No? Sir. Okay, the last one, again, it was a discussion item at the last meeting, and it's for approval tonight. It's the resolution to transfer funds to the capital fund from working cash. And this is more, again, accounting cleanup. The entire amount will not be transferred. It'll be done incrementally as expenses are incurred related to the kindergarten building, such as A&E, architectural engineering costs, things of that sort, as well as the summer projects from 2016-17 from last summer. It would offset that cost, along with, per the memo, a small negative balance that we've been carrying for a few years that would be negated with this transfer. Any questions related to this?
If for some reason the kindergarten center does not move forward, is there any kind of penalty we incur moving the funds back?
We're not going to transfer all the funds, only the amount of funds that will be used for the expenses that have been incurred.
So far, you mean?
So far, correct.
Okay, so construction bid, design, that sort of thing.
Only those things primarily, correct.
Thanks.
Any more questions? Jeff, can you hear us clearly right now?
Yes, it's a lot better, thank you.
Any questions regarding any of the finance pieces to Abe? Jeff?
No, not from me.
Okay. Thank you, Abe. The next is Superintendent's report regarding the middle school dual language expansion.
Yes, as you recall, last year we had permission to move forward with expanding dual language into the middle school. And this year we've got a plan for that to expand for the 6th grade and then for the 7th grade with minimal impact or net zero impact to the budget. We will have our Spanish literacy and we'll have Spanish social studies in the 6th grade. We are reassigning some resources, staffing resources within the district to cover those costs. We also have our needs for our ELL students, bilingual students in the middle schools. There's a ratio of teachers to students that are needing servicing. We've been way below the recommended. So the 2 new hires for the Spanish social studies, part of their day will be Spanish social studies, and then part of the day will be servicing those students that require those services to put us back into closer to the guidelines that are recommended from the state. So it's kind of a little bit of a double dip there to help both programs move forward. And that will also help us with some student-teacher ratios in our social studies classrooms because these students are in the schools anyway. But they'll be pulled into the Spanish social studies when there are other social studies classes going and help reduce some of those classes as well. So we're excited about those staffing adjustments made to meet the growth of the dual language into middle school, and then also meet some of the needs for our ELL students at the middle school level as well, that we're needing some services and we needed to increase the staffing as well. So we feel like we've helped address 2 issues. Board will need to make a decision in 2 years if they wish to go to the 8th grade to continue it. That will have some staffing implications as well from there. We did look for science teachers, but reports from the building principals where we didn't find any qualified science teachers that we felt would meet our needs for that level. So we're going to the social studies and expand that way.
Does anybody have any questions or comments about that?
In order for it to be a true dual language program, doesn't half 50% of the day need to be in Spanish?
We would like to try to get to that ratio, like at the elementary level, but we didn't. We were trying to go with science, and didn't find quality science applicant to fill that. And so we'll continue to look at that each year. We'll look and then bring recommendations to the board if there's a quality applicant, if we want to go there. And our challenge is to make that a academic subject area. Try to keep the language skills sharp in both of those areas.
So how many more hours per day are these dual language kids getting in Spanish than they would have otherwise gotten in Spanish anyway?
I will have to go back and calculate. I'm sorry, I don't know that off the top of my head, but what they're having 2 dual language Spanish courses in essence, and they didn't in the past. They might take advanced Spanish, but Now they'll have Spanish literacy and social studies Spanish. So we've expanded that option for them.
So 50 minutes, 40 to 50 minutes more, right? But the social studies.
Yeah, right.
Because literacy, advanced Spanish would become Spanish literacy, and then social studies would be a 40 or 50-minute period that it is, right?
And our teachers going to be sharing classrooms. Where am I picturing that these social studies classrooms will go?
I'd have to ask Mr. Natal and Mr. Collins for the location. They have something picked up, but I didn't ask them what class they'll be.
Okay.
Any more questions? Jeff?
No.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda, these discussion items, there is no decision being made. This is discussion items right now. So the first item is the kindergarten building construction bid updates. We had gotten the bids that had come in higher than what we had anticipated. And about 2 weeks ago, Tom from LAMP had suggested that they would go and take a look at it and see, do value engineering to see what could be adjusted to make our numbers be more favorable. So this is for the kindergarten building construction update.
Anyone, DLR's coming or not?
Tom, just a second. Can you hear Tom, Jeff?
Can you hear me, Jeff?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So we just kind of a quick recap. We did send in the letter along with the list. Just kind of hit on some of the bullet points over the last several weeks. We've kind of been reviewing a list of potential cost reduction items, things that we can look at that we try to focus on, things that would minimize, impacts to the students or the learning environment, teaching environment, those sorts of things. But along with each of the items, there's a varying degree of, trade-offs, whether it's aesthetic changes, quality reduction, performance reduction, future costs that could be eventually associated with the project, those sorts of things. So along that list, we tried to kind of categorize each one to give you a little bit of an idea of where that was. And along with the list is the updated a version of an updated summary page if we were to plug in kind of what those changes come out to be. And you can still see we're over the 12 million mark. Jason. Still carrying the contingencies that we've talked about in the past. But just kind of one thing to note on the summary page, if you're looking all the way to the right-hand column, that includes all of the site work. We're obviously still significantly over on that, and if we were to try to get to that level, we would have to definitely take a look at some more drastic changes, things that we don't want to do any of these, but to get down to that mark, we would have to dig a little deeper and, maybe some more drastic cuts would be associated. So that's kind of a quick summary on what it is. If there's specific questions that we have on the list, we'll try to answer those for you.
Can I ask some questions about specific items? It's item number 7. It says omit extension of water main down Phillips Road. This will not be required by the village.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the extension of that water main doing? Like, are we going to be increased risk for flooding or flooding surrounding areas? Does this have to do with anything like that?
I think early in some of the civil design with the village, they wanted to add a fire hydrant down at the end of Phillips, where the new end of Phillips Drive would be. After further discussion, they decided that that wasn't even needed, so we were able to omit that. And it was bid as an alternate with that kind of being anticipated that it might not be required.
Okay. And on item number 8, eliminate compression bracing and storm shelter not required by the precast contractor. Is there any reduced structural integrity from that?
No, it's the design of this is all in the storm shelter. It's all precast.
Right.
The whole design is basically delegated to the precast manufacturer. And before they bid, they go through and do their whole design, basically what's going to work, structural calculations, all that. And originally the structural engineer showed that, not knowing if it was needed, but we've confirmed with the precast contractor that it wouldn't be required. It would just be unnecessary. It'd be additional structure that, but no, you're not affecting the stability of the building at all.
Okay. the HVAC, sorry, item number 44, the HVAC design specification revisions.
Mm-hmm.
It says reduced function. So what are we talking of in terms of quality right away, and what are we talking down the road in terms of environmental quality and comfort, as well as replacement of the parts?
Right. It's hard to speak to the replacements of the parts. 'Cause I think they're more just sacrificing some of the comfort level that you would have gotten with, like this one, taking away the radiant ceiling panels. Instead, they'll just use forced air from the diffusers. The ceiling panels give you a little bit more controlled comfort. This just kind of scales back that functionality in that. So it'd go person by person, whether they're hot or cold, depending on who's using the space. Obviously, that can fluctuate too. So, but that summarizes it a little bit.
I think one thing to highlight too, in terms of the mechanical system that we changed, this is definitely not a change in terms of code compliance or overall performance of the system. It's just a different style of mechanical system.
Okay.
So we never give the district a mechanical system. Obviously, that didn't be an excellent system that would perform well, but just the system that we had designed initially was a system that would have performed better for a kindergarten and done a better job at mixing the air, less stratification, more comfort overall.
Is this one going to last as long? Or are we going to be replacing it sooner? What's the longevity on that?
Duration of the equipment and material should be equal to the system that we had before.
So with the change, how does this compare to our existing buildings? Would we be on par with what we have currently?
I don't know a ton about the existing buildings. A lot of the existing buildings in the district are unit ventilators. So that's a separate kind of standalone mechanical system for each classroom, whereas this was a building-wide mechanical system. So it'd be more compared to a mechanical system that you have at Town Line, which is a more modern building.
Yes. What I'm trying to get at is, with this change, or if we do this reduction, are we getting anything less than what we have in Town Line, for example? No. Okay.
There is a lot of changes. Some of them is, quality reduction. Some of it is aesthetic, and some of it is, future maintenance. As you pointed out in bullet points. I mean, with everything in place, the reduction is about 1.3 million from what the previous cost was. I mean, we might do some, we might not. We actually need to get a memo from DLR to see, which ones are recommended, which ones are not for each line item, depending on what we needed as an educational facility. And we need to run those numbers with our facilities and management, as well as our business managers, to see, what we can. But even even if we do all of them, we are still over budget on the kindergarten center, and we'll have to figure out. But I think the first step is to get a memo from DLR to see, which ones we can't sacrifice. I mean, they are, but in the weigh them out to see what can go and what would start affecting our educational space, as well as the life cycle of and some of them you have said, like, some of them would be future function, and I think that we would have to work with our facilities and business to see. But overall, the building is high, so that is where we stand right now. We are not making any decisions today, but we have to come up with to see what options it is, because
everyone's breaking up again.
Sorry?
The break. Can you hear it?
Everybody's breaking up again.
I don't know what.
Talking.
Huh?
I guess talk closer. I don't know what else.
Keep talking.
Okay. Yeah. So, the kindergarten building is one of the options in the plans, and as we go through all the other plans and try to narrow it down, we'll have to figure out where building this whole building would be in relation to, and how do we finance it as an option itself when we go through all the other options and the other plans that we have come up for the community input. So once we start narrowing it down, I think that's where we stand. I think the next step is to get something from DLR in a memo format to address each specific change, to see how does it kind of affect our educational and architectural viability of stuff that we wanted. Anybody have anything to say or
So
add to that?
Another big increase was the site item for the access road, and that was going to be discussed with the village in terms of what are our options there. Did you have a conversation with them, Nick, and what are our options?
I've tried multiple times on two topics. One was there a more firm commitment on some dollars they had on their budget, and they still haven't confirmed how that would be provided to us. The other is that they're still trying to schedule that meeting to determine if we were going off Phillips Road or behind the Victory Center. They've yet to confirm that adjustment in the plan, and they wish to talk to the owners of the Victory Center and the residents of the Victory Center of that piece. Just today, we tried to confirm if there's any meeting scheduled. We tried a couple weeks ago. It has not yet been set. They had one scheduled and got canceled by the Victory Center, so I still don't have anything new. I would assume at this point, what I know is that the Phillips Road access road was the original preferred. I would go off of estimates of the cost of that because any adjustment would be less, but I don't have a confirmation that they're going to go off behind the Victory Center and make that adjustment.
Is not having an access road an option? Going to our original plan of using the existing parking lot and roads that we have
Aspen. Just going off Aspen, right?
Yeah,
like
just
going in and up front.
Going in and up of the existing access or the existing entrance to the Sullivan Center, using that parking lot, drop off and turn around was there. So there was no access road behind. That was our original idea for the 12 million. So the village came and said, we would like an access road. That's going to add so much cost to us. Mm-hmm. Is that something that we can,
like
go back to our original?
I think there is, I don't really know. I'm not getting a clear direction as we're trying to determine the Phillips Road or the I'll call it the Victory Center drive. I know that they would prefer us not to use that as a solution. It was the original option that was discussed. I think it's still on the table, but I think they want to exhaust other avenues first before they would get to that. And we're just waiting for them to arrange for that meeting with the Victory Center to see if that's viable. So I think it's still on the table, but I don't think it's the preferred option from the village, and they're trying to get the other.
Can I ask about? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sure. I was just going to ask about that 500,000. Whether we've gotten confirmation of loan, gift, partial. Is it 100% a go? Do we know where we stand on that?
I know that the 500,000 is in the budget for supporting Hawthorne. I have not received confirmation if that's a loan or a gift or a combination thereof, where they give you 250 and loan you 250. I'm still waiting for that piece.
Can I ask about one more line item, please? It is item number 47, provide the rough-in only for the AV system in classrooms, maker spaces, and dramatic play. If we shift that burden to post-construction, how much more would you estimate that's going to cost us if it gets delayed 1-2 years, whatever it would be? Because I'm not sure I see the point if it's going to end up costing us the same thing anyway.
Right, yeah, so there probably would be, whether you do it a year, there's going to be, raises, probably material increases and labor increases as well. I don't have an exact amount, maybe 5% or so more, just based on the year-to-year kind of increases in construction. 5 to 10% might be a fair amount.
So what are we losing with just the rough-in? Are we going to be able to have projectors like that?
Yeah, so they tried to look at it, just scaling it back a little bit. So yeah, you'll still have the projector screen, obviously. And then I think he reduced it maybe to one speaker that the teacher would use with their computer instead of kind of a whole kind of panel board of everything. So it kind of just takes away a little bit of the functionality of it. But they will still be able to use their projector and everything, just not to the full functionality that it probably could.
So again, no less than what we have now in our existing classrooms.
Do you know what they have in there?
I'm not sure on where you have amplification in all the classrooms. I don't think you have amplification in all the classrooms in the district right now. What was in the budget was just the power and rough-in for all the equipment. And what we were including in the original scope of the project was also the speakers for every classroom, amplification for every classroom. The projector itself was already part of the equipment budget for the project. So since we're taking the speakers out of the project and we're providing basically a conduit and back boxes for where you would put speakers at a later date when you wanted to buy that equipment, the projector would still be coming out of the equipment budget for the project. And most projectors come with speakers. So if for example, a teacher was playing a video in class, they would still have audio with that. It would be coming out of a projector and not more of a full audio system in the room. So it'd just be lower quality audio.
Speaking of audio, on line 22, delete multiple layers of drywall and interior partitions. How is this going to affect noise traveling from one classroom to another or from hallway to classroom?
It's going to decrease the acoustic performance of the building overall.
By like a noticeable amount, or?
Probably by a noticeable amount, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, this is what we need in a memo to kind of better understand, what is going to get affected and what is not, like every line item, because I mean, there are about, 49, 50,
That was all I
49
had.
and 7.
That was all I had.
We're working on the memo.
So, yeah, because that would really help us in trying to narrow down as what it is, but also to understand, what sort of building we do actually want to eventually put it out on. How we finance it would be different, but what is the kind of building that we want for our community and for our students? So,
Will we have the memo before Monday?
that would be a question. Yes, will we have the memo before? Okay. Thanks, Jason.
And then this might be kind of more of a question for Nick, but a lot of these are interior, but there are some of them that are exterior. Is it changing the outside a lot? Are we going to need approval from the park district again and things of that nature if we're changing the aesthetics of the outside?
We wouldn't necessarily need approval from the village on that. The park district have asked us to keep it the visual continuous, but I think that they would be reasonable with those changes as long as we're not making the building purple. So.
Anything else that, if anybody needs anything specific, if you could, if you think about anything later, if you could just email Nick and Jason, then we can get it to both of them so that they can get the memo out to us by Monday. So which would kind of help us in guiding us in trying to get to the decision with the different options, because this would be a plan of what we would, it'd come into the total budget. Anything?
Just the bid date. The bid is good for 60 days, so we're 30 days in?
90.
90
actually,
days?
yeah.
So we've got 2 months left.
Correct.
Officially, as
Yeah,
it relates
for
to those
that
contracts.
first, they were due on the 4th, I believe, of April. The first set was collected, and then I think it was the 17th.
Correct.
On the those last 4 or 5. So, kind of 90 days according to that.
Okay, so we have about 2 months left on that. But that doesn't, we'll figure it out.
So now the next opportunity for us to talk about this is on Monday? Is that right?
Yes, I was thinking because we'd have the memo from them and then we'd have all our options together along with pricing by that time. So we would know exactly how much this building is going to cost to kind of put it in there as part of the options, right?
We'll have the memo by Monday, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Tom. Jeff, did you have any question?
No, I can get any questions in a separate memo. I guess one comment, though, is that I'm a little concerned with some of the things that have been eliminated that we may end up putting them back in anyway.
Yes.
So that's just something to think about.
No, definitely. I mean, the building is, with even if we take everything out, it's 1.3 down, which is still 1.3 down from the final budget, but it's still over our 12. So, I mean, I don't think all of it is going to come out just educationally wise. If I look at some of them, like the acoustic and drywall paneling for sound and things, but when we put some of those back in, it'll just add. But we'll wait for the memo from DLR, which way we'll have a better idea what to take off, what to put in, and what to compromise on.
Right.
Okay. The next item is, do you want to do survey report and then the plan viability from DLR? This was the survey that was done for the community, which closed on May 9th. It's a big packet.
Oh, man. Quiz tomorrow.
And it's small print. Bonnie, thank
you.
My eyes.
Thank you.
Everything before the appendices is the key.
Okay.
Don't bother yourself.
Oh.
And we have one person who's not here.
Yes.
Jeff.
Yeah, or you could give it to Wendy and she'll. Jeff, we have a paper packet for you for the survey. It's with Wendy, so you can pick it up from her.
Okay.
So good evening. There's been quite a bit of work since the last time we met. We're going to start with the survey. Obviously, Bonnie just handed out detailed copies of the data. We're going to present an overview. And we're going to talk about vetting the community options from the April 30th meeting. And the one of the purposes of the survey was to help understand the priorities from the community perspective. So we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. And while the presentation is coming up, I thought it'd be a good time, since Bonnie really hasn't had a chance to present before you, if she could provide a little bit of background about her expertise and what she brings to the team.
Surprise introduction time. Hi, I'm Bonnie Sanborn. I'm a design researcher and a space planner with DLR Group. So my focus is in social psychology research. I am not an architect or an engineer. I'm a psychologist. I study how people work and learn, and I've also been an educator in the past. So I have a big passion for building schools, and I'm happy to be joining you in person instead of via email tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Bonnie. Mm-hmm.
Here we go.
So we sent a survey out through the district to the community. It was open for just about 1 month, give or take.
No, a week.
1 week.
Sorry, a week. Sorry. Different survey. And it had a really high participation rate. I was really pleased to see the responses roll in every time an update reminder was sent out. 770 total responses were received. 637 of those would be considered complete. It's a very high completion rate for a survey. About 83%. The response rate is unknown because it was open to the entire community over that period of time, so I don't have a number to work with for the response rate.
Just a little bit of perspective, when we last surveyed as a part of the EFMP in 2016, we received below 500 responses.
Sorry, getting the hang of the wheel. There we go. Not moving forward. There we go. So the first part of the survey was to help us with grading these options. The community was asked about 10 priorities that were identified through core team and district meetings. They were asked to rate the importance of each of the priorities to themselves as a part of the master plan. And then we derived a weighted average score so that we could rank order these priorities. The ranking is used for the grading process that you'll see momentarily. And based on the survey, I don't know how easy it is to read from where you are, but equity in spaces was the #1 priority. Low time first cost, extracurricular spaces, those make up the top 3. And then building shift and low life cycle cost round out the top 5. You'll see that some of the scores in the middle are very close, but the trends in the data support this ranking order. There we go. Takes 2 apparently. So the following trends were observed. These are trends. They're not statistically significant in all cases, so I don't want to give you the impression this is overwhelming, but this is what was noted. Equity in spaces was a uniformly high priority across all stakeholder groups. When it comes to low first-time cost, there was a great deal of variation in the responses here, so it was much more important to some people than to others. For extracurricular spaces, there was a great deal of variation, but it all skewed toward the medium to high end. Building shift shows a different prioritization level from teachers than from other groups. So as in many districts, many master plan processes, teachers have different lens that they see these things through, and building shift was a different sort of issue for them. Low life cycle cost had no notable variation. For outdoor play and green spaces, very understandably, parents, teachers, and future parents tend to rank this higher than other groups. In terms of creating a higher density campus, there was a great deal of variation here. It was mostly on the low end to not a concern. In terms of keeping current density, there were a set of middling responses here, kind of a neutral territory from teachers as compared to other groups. Solving traffic issues and preserving enrollment boundaries had no noticeable variation by group.
Can I ask a question about the higher density one before we go forward, because it comes up quite a bit? I personally found that one a little bit confusing. So if we're saying creating a higher density campus is of low prioritization, does that mean it's something people don't want or something they just don't care about, whether it's
hard to say based on the way the survey is created. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was ranked as something that was not a high priority for them to include in the master plan.
Okay.
The foil for it was keeping current density. So looking at people who ranked keeping current density very high and ranked creating higher density very low, that would be the people who feel preferring one over the other.
Okay.
There was a set of issues other than the priorities that respondents were asked about. I'll just, in the interest of time, read through the ones that received very high or very low support. So dedicated STEAM space received relatively high support. Again, didn't achieve statistical significance in all cases. Adaptive reuse versus new build got a very neutral response. Most people said whichever best fits the needs of the district. Most respondents agreed with the inclusion of sustainable features, but not strongly. Everything was neutral up until maintaining program access. There was high support for this item as well. And in terms of keeping total enrollment, approximately 800, neutral, trending toward agreement. I'm doing it. Okay. Respondents were asked about 7 different potential options. No option received statistically significant support or lack of support. I want to stress there were very even responses across all agreement levels. So people could strongly disagree all the way up to strongly agree. There is somewhat less support for a kindergarten addition at the Sullivan Community Center than for the other options by a very small margin. Somewhat less support for a dual language K-5 option, and somewhat more support for options that focus on the middle school, such as accommodating grades 5 through 8 and creating a new or adaptive reuse building for them. Somewhat more support for middle school in general. And the other ones had no clear support or lack of support. Responses did indicate that about a quarter of your respondents were not familiar with the current educational facilities master plan. So this is something to note in terms of communication. Demographics, just for your reference, respondents were asked to choose up to 2 roles with which they strongly identified. 655 people answered this question. There were a great deal of parents, community members, and taxpayers. Since people could identify in more than one group, obviously there can be some overlap here. Obviously, by the limited size of you, the board, you have a very low participation rate. So we don't hold it against you. Respondents were also asked which schools their children attend. Here's the spread of that. The font size is quite small, so the category all the way on the right is the not applicable category. Lincoln Early Learning Center had the lowest number of responses here.
Got the lowest number of students there.
Questions on the survey before we transition? It's a lot of information to digest in a short period of time. The package.
Yeah, I'm overwhelmed right now.
There were also open comment boxes on the survey so that people could leave their open comments, and those are included in the appendix for you. It's the part of the appendix that is probably big, the one to call out.
We'll just keep moving and then we'll come back.
Okay. So the board asked us to begin to analyze 4 different options that were arrived at on April 30th. And so we're calling this a preliminary analysis, of course. We're doing basically a master plan reboot in a period of weeks instead of a year. And so we ask for a little bit of patience with some of the details. But tonight we wanted to present an order of magnitude based on the data that the team has been able to capture over the last several weeks. And then feel free to ask questions as we get to the next step. So as was mentioned, these are the 4 options. Now there's one qualification, so you can read quite clearly what they were, but new 5-8 middle school, new 7-8 middle school, where the existing schools become 5-6, so to add a transition. New elementary south, which is also familiar from the EFMP process from 2016. New dual language, and then a little bit of a twist because of how the enrollment was balancing as a part of this option. Pre-K was bundled into the new dual language option at that center, right? So it'd be a pre-K / dual language facility in order to best balance enrollment in that choice. So that was something that the team helped vet with Nick and Sonali's input along the way. So it's also worth noting that pre-K is within all of the options coming back from Lincoln. So we took a standardized approach to some of these elements like STEM or STEAM, renovated libraries, those kinds of things. They're all in here. These are all levers that the board can choose to pull or not pull as they move forward in the process, but nevertheless, they all exist for comparing apples to apples, if you will. So we thought we'd clarify, and I apologize for the font wrap there, additions and renovations to the existing building. So we went back and we asked the administration and the individual buildings to help us understand how the needs have evolved since 2016. So as space has continued to be an issue and enrollment continues to change, demographics and student needs also continue to evolve, we found that there were some distinct differences between the 2016 process and this process. And so you'll see just a list of the various additions and renovations that were proposed at certain buildings. We also have boards of each one of these options if you'd like to see them, or we have 11x17 handouts that we can provide to the board of what we proposed. Very similar format to the original EFMP. Bless you. So you'll see just a list, and I won't read it all. So we've broken this slide into quadrants. The upper left-hand quadrant signifies the major components of the 5A middle school option. Likewise, upper left, 7-8. Lower left, new elementary south, and lower right, new dual language plus pre-K. So you can read some of the distinctions. Now, we did, when the enrollment was plugged in, the 2026 enrollment was plugged in, you'll see that the middle school options have gotten slightly larger than was discussed on April 30th. So you'll see the 5-8 was for 1,000 students. Part of this became our strategy to maximize but not overtax the capacities at the existing middle schools. So rather than create 3 equally sized 5-8 centers, We leveraged the buildings for the capacity in which we felt they could hold, and then put the balance of the students at the new facility. In other words, we didn't over-encumber one of the sites or the other, for that matter. Rather, we maximized both of those facilities. So you'll see fifth grade obviously moves up. All elementary schools become K4. Pre-K in this scenario in the 5-8 moves to Aspen. And then, of course, as with all the options, the schools get the needed additions and renovations, as was on the previous slide. Similarly, for new 7-8, you'll see 1,100 students, a little bit larger. Middle North and South become 5-6 grade centers. All elementary schools become K4. Pre-K again to Aspen. When we look at New Elementary South, you can see New Elementary South for 900 students. This is larger than previously studied in 2016, simply because kindergarten was planned to go to the Sullivan Center. So this particular option does not include construction at the Sullivan Center at this time. The other notable difference between the New Elementary South option and the other options is the idea of building shifts to try and align enrollment with the facilities as they currently sit to minimize the additions, if you will, required to support that. So you'll see Town Line and Middle North switch facilities. One goes to the other and vice versa, teachers and students and all. Dual language transitions to Aspen's facility. Aspen goes to the previous Elementary South, and pre-K joins Aspen at the previous Elementary South. Elementary South shifts to a new facility. When we look at the new dual language plus pre-K now, you'll see obviously dual language for 450. Now the previous board discussion at this meeting talking about the expansion of dual language was not contemplated in this scenario, so obviously that would need to shift if the board's desire to shift occurred to a more holistic middle school model for dual language. The pre-K center was attached to new dual language as previously mentioned, and the only other flip that occurs is Town Line to Middle North and then Middle North back to Town Line. So I will note too that when we contemplated how we would transition Town Line into a middle school, the existing Town Line facility into a middle school, we wanted to capture the needed middle school spaces, of course, and then vice versa. On the other side, for the Town Line students transitioning to Middle North, we wanted to make sure that that facility was equally appropriate for their use. And so when we get to the dollar part of the conversation, which Tom can join us for, we can talk about some of those nuances. But we did provide dollars in the budget to create that scenario for both sets of students switching buildings, because it is a grade level switch, not just a population movement. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So when we think about square footages, operations and maintenance become part and parcel to the conversation. How much square footage would each option require to accommodate the same enrollment, right? So how do we begin to balance the buildings? And so you'll see the representative square footage and their increase over the existing square footage in the district today. So the smallest footprint moving forward would be the new Elementary South option, 29% increase over existing. This is the smallest square footage. And if you look at the new 7-8 middle school, this is the largest, although slightly more than the new 5-8, the largest square footage in the district. Now, the difference between the two, if you look at the percentages, well, it doesn't seem like that much, but this is equivalent to the size of the existing Aspen Elementary School, right? So this is not an insignificant amount of square footage more in the two middle school options versus the two elementary school options, if you will, on the lower part of the slide. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
To Aspen, you said?
It's roughly equivalent to the square footage of the existing Aspen Elementary School.
Which one?
From the largest.
That's just the difference between
the difference between the two.
Correct.
Okay, sorry.
So it's like having that additional square footage added on.
So, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand now.
Tom, you want to join us and talk about this a little bit?
Whoa.
Again. So kind of to touch on the costs quickly here, we had a pretty good work session last week, Thursday. Sat down with DLR, kind of went through each option, kind of broke each option into different parts and pieces, whether it's additions, renovations, and we assigned cost to each of those. We had a cost for the additions,
each of the renovations we kind of categorize into like low, medium, high level sort of renovation costs to kind of break those out accordingly. This is very conceptual square footage price. Like I said, it was kind of a quick turnaround on some of these items. So we're trying to stay as conservative as possible, but realistic as well. We're looking back at some other communities that are in somewhat close to the same process right now and using costs similar to what they're carrying as well. Some of the costs will obviously depend on final design, when the construction is actually going to happen, all that, we can keep looking at further down the process of, what projects will go when and those sorts of things. And we'll start to, factor in any, escalation costs, those sorts of things if the construction happens,
I don't like that word, escalation, in any part of this.
Yeah,
thing.
it's not ideal. But that's just kind of a quick recap on how we came up with the costs on that.
So a few things of note, because we did divide the survey questions or prompts into first-time costs and then life cycle costs. So the first-time cost is qualified in dollars. The life cycle cost, or the long-term operating and maintenance cost, is a 30-year increment and broken into dollar signs. So at this point, it's relative because there's a lot we still don't know about these choices. In particular, when you think about an adaptive reuse versus conventional construction and those sorts of things. Now, we did find through Tom's diligence, we found, depending upon if it's a middle school choice or an elementary school choice, that there's a 14 to 19% savings overall to the construction cost of that one part. So if you built, in other words, an adaptive reuse middle school versus a conventionally constructed middle school, there's a cost savings of roughly 19%. On the elementary side, it's roughly 14%. So there is a difference there. It's not significant in the overall dollars. Well, it is significant, but it's not as significant in proportion to the total because of the amount of construction still required at each individual campus due to the needs of not only today's students, but indeed the future enrollment, right? So just indicative of that. Now, these options are more square footage. So folks in the audience may be thinking to themselves, wow, this is a big number, and obviously it is, but the square footages have changed, right? So when we did this in 2016, we did needs based on 2016 and the understanding. Based on our understanding of 2018 needs, the percentage increase of square footage in the district is 13 to 20% more than it was previously. And so the needs have continued to grow, and then when you factor in the community priorities for equity and equal access to programs and things like that, we wanted to ensure that these options had enough art, music, PE space to accommodate the need long term. Now, obviously, all of these could be phased in over time, so it's not that you would have the ability to say, oh, we're going to put out a plan that's all built at once, right? So this would have to be a long-term plan, just as it was in 2016. So a lot of information, again, to digest, but proportionally, it is less expensive to do the elementary versions, the two on the bottom of the slide, at this point solely because they are smaller footprints than the middle schools. Now, as we get further along, when the board says, okay, we want to narrow this down further and we really only want to talk about this one or that one, we can begin to provide more fine detail on all of these, and the cost will continue to refine. But as Tom mentioned, we were conservative in our approach. So let's talk about the prioritization from the community and how these options scored. And so, Bonnie, you want to help me out on this?
So we used an approach that's based on something called the Pew Concept Selection Matrix, which is a really fun title. And it's really useful in situations where there are many competing priorities and many potential solutions to meet those priorities. This is why we use it in this situation. So we took a panel of 15 graders made up of board members, core team members, and professionals from DLR Group. And they were presented with what's on the boards behind me here, the graphic and description of each of these four options. They were given a set of guidelines, a sort of a rubric for grading, and asked to objectively grade on a scale of 0 to 10 according to how well any option met a specific priority. So we're creating a matrix here. panel graded independently and in isolation from each other. And a weighted average grade for each option was derived. It's given a multiplier, so if something is your top priority, it has 10 points to give every option. And if something receives a grade of 3 for that priority, you wind up with 10 times 3, which is 30. And then we add them all up to get a final grade for each option. 12 of 15 panelists completed grading. There were 4 pages, 1 for each option, and the grading items were randomized on each page so that there were no effects of ordering on the responses to the questions. 1 response had to be removed from final grading due to some bias that was perceived in the grades statistically. 2 items presented significant confusion to the panel. There was a great deal of variance in the responses, and they both had standard deviation over 3. We chose to remove these and revisit them later for regrading. The 2 items were removed, preserving enrollment boundaries and building shift. So as we said before, building shift seemed to be an item that confused people. Stats back that up. This deserves revisiting.
And obviously, again, as options become clearer and site locations are considered, a lot of these things will be more quantifiable, more readily quantifiable.
So here is a screenshot of the option matrix in action. Each grade gets entered, and next to its corresponding priority. Often when we score these, that bar chart on the right has a little more swing in the scores the options receive. But the highest score by these priorities and these grades was received for New Elementary School South, received a total score of 300, just above dual language at 282. The lowest score was for the new 7-8. One more thing to note, costs were scored objectively based on the cost information that was just presented.
So you'll see the zeros and the asterisks to qualify both building shift and preserving enrollment boundaries, as Bonnie mentioned. There are some additional footnotes. So the community priorities came directly from the survey, and as previously presented, the concept scoring, as Bonnie mentioned, was on a 0 to 10 scale, and then you can see in the top 2 sections there the community priorities, 1, 2, and 3, and then the highest value by score, high value, and then mid value by score. Accordingly. So this tool is a conversation starter. It's not meant to take away the community value or the subjectivity of these important issues. What it is what does allow boards to do is say, here's a starting point for us. We have some scores, we have some data. It was done through a process, as Bonnie mentioned, through the Pew method, and we have something to begin with. And so if you look at this and the costs and the various components of the other parts of the survey, which you need time to digest, you may start to have more questions. We anticipate you'll have a lot more questions, so we'll get there eventually. But for our last 2 weeks of due diligence, this is where we land for tonight. And with that, we have no more presentation, but certainly open the floor to board questions.
It's a lot of information.
All right.
Jason.
Back to the cost matrix, the quad.
See if I can get back there.
It's more of a statement, so I just want to verify. So the EFMP that we passed a couple years ago, I believe the price was $54 million. So the referendum was for $42 million, and then we were going to use $12 million out of our reserve fund. So it was $54 million. That was 2016. So even if we increase that by 10%, that's $59 million. 20%, we're up to 64, and 30%, we're only at $70 million relative to these. Are those numbers in line with what you had known about the EFMP?
Great question. That's next for us. Because we'd spent a lot of focused effort on trying to get these options to an equal level and vet them for you tonight, we have not gone back and reconciled dollars with LAMP's help from the 2016 effort. And as I mentioned, I think in passing, there are some square footage inequities between the current plans and the plans from 2016. So I believe that those 2 factors are the reason why you're seeing a delta. We should also go back and remind ourselves, and I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but what the square footages were as a total footprint for the district, and to qualify all of those things. So my hope is as the board begins to contemplate what we've shown tonight, and we have a chance to go catch up on the previous EFMP, the adopted EFMP, and maybe even the other choice back in 2016, if you'd like us to, we can begin to start to compare those with these, and I'll give you just more context.
Because at the last slide where you had the scoring, we don't see scoring of the existing plan.
Correct.
So how would we compare those four with what we have today?
That's certainly something we can go back and do. And actually, in order to further the scoring of the four, it'd be helpful if we could make some decisions about where these buildings might go, and if you'd elect to do adaptive reuse or new construction as a preference. The community, as was mentioned, was fine with either. The more that we can continue to narrow down, the sharper we'll be in our ability to compare these choices.
Okay, so I look at the new elementary south, and I know that it consisted of building shifts and things that the original Plan A didn't, but why is it so much more this way than it was? I mean, I know it's been a couple of years, but why is it so much more expensive than Plan A originally was?
That's another good question. So the original Plan A was a 1-4 building, or a 1-5 building. Thank you. And so the kindergarten center was not included. So if you took the $12 million originally estimated for the Sullivan Center and added it to the elementary south Plan A option, that would get you closer. And then the reconciliation of the dollars has come with time, right? So the percentage basis, as Jason just asked as a part of his question, is certainly one methodology. The market rate that we're seeing across multiple cost estimators across multiple districts is very much in keeping with the numbers we're sharing with you tonight. And so there's been some market reconciliation with these dollars as well, right? So it's just not necessarily a linear 3% a year or 5% a year. We've maybe seen some additional increases. There is some cost escalation to be considered, no doubt. So all of it kind of wraps together. And we'll do our best as we move forward to keep comparing these things as close to apples as we can, and provide you with lists where they deviate.
Well, the original EFMP, though, option A, did not have us switching Middle North and Town Line. So these cost estimates do include the estimate for adjusting those buildings for the new population, correct? So
correct. We have renovation dollars associated with both of those facilities, both of those switches.
Right.
And so we're renovating more square footage at Town Line in a heavier fashion to convert those spaces, whereas at Middle North, our approach was more of a universal building-wide renovation at a lighter level. So we took the entirety of the square footage and multiplied a lower number per square foot in order to prepare that space for the Town Line students.
So as you mentioned, it would be helpful, to get both the original, both the EFMP plans that we had, the A and the B, the one that was adopted and the other one that was not, to get them to the same level of, for the same usage. To get the dollar amounts on each one of them, because that would answer Judy's question as to why the new elementary south school was that different. And then, but as you mentioned, the usages are a bit different. So we have to reconcile the previous two plans to the new usages and then come up with new numbers. And you'll get those to us.
Correct.
By Monday?
Yeah.
Huh? What did you say?
We are your only client.
I'm sorry?
We are your only client.
That's what I heard. You better specify which Monday.
Right.
Sure. Yeah, we continue to work very diligently to get you the information that you need.
Then if anybody else is interested or curious, I'd be curious to see what the old Plan A looked like if it was put on
Equal footing of these guys.
with the adaptive reuse, or also maybe the land in Mundelein. So just not on Aspen.
Okay.
So do these numbers include land acquisition cost?
We included a plug-in number. Tom, help me remember what it is. We included a plug-in number for either purchase or land acquisition. So if you were going to do adaptive reuse, we had a modest number in for that. And if you were going to purchase land, we had a number in for that as well.
And was the adaptive reuse, the dollars you put in, was that for lease or was that for purchase?
We've not contemplated leasing as a part of these choices. We'd contemplated a purchase lump sum value.
I'm sorry to keep going, but is there buildings to accommodate the adaptive reuse? I mean, did you guys find them?
Yes.
Okay.
It was most challenging and is most challenging when you get to the middle grade levels. We really maximize the kind of the comfort factor of an adaptive reuse, at least at the size facilities we've seen thus far. At the elementary level, I'm very comfortable.
Great.
Kind of a qualitative question, I guess. Do you remember that survey we did about a year back about why the referendum failed, or people's feedback about why they voted the way they did? It wasn't necessarily like 90%, but there was a fair amount of feedback that people were not supportive of adding on space strictly devoted to STEM. It was a lot of, especially in the comment section, it was a lot of going, if you need classroom space, you need classroom space, but we could save money by not adding square footage directly devoted to STEM. These place STEM in what seems to be a fairly high, I don't want to say priority, but a lot of support for adding STEAM or STEM. Any guess as to why we're seeing that difference? Is it the way the question was asked? Have people's minds just changed? Is it that we got more responses? Is it people are now understanding this is more than just a space constraint situation?
Is Jill here?
Jill Martin?
Yeah. Jill Martin and I had a conversation
yeah.
a week ago, and maybe I can answer half of this, and maybe Bonnie can answer half, and maybe Jill can jump in. But just understanding the level of projects that are already ongoing and embedded into the classrooms today, and the amount of storage, and Jill was characterizing a project to me on the phone last week, and so trying to understand those things, not knowing that this is the answer, Robin, but one of the things might have been the continued emphasis on these important topics and the infusion into the classrooms, and maybe some of the pressures are becoming more visible. The spatial pressures are becoming more visible to the parents or the students even. That's one potential answer. Bonnie, I don't know if you have a survey answer for that.
Kind of. So I spent a lot of time with the appendix and can't help but have read a lot of the comments. The one thing that I did see crop up around the STEAM question was that there's sort of a caveat for several people, which was that they made sense if there were the curriculum and the faculty to support them. So for some people, it may not be 100%, but it may be a supportive if. I am hazarding a guess based on what I saw in the comments.
Okay.
You're doing it now. It's just embedded in the classroom, from what I understand.
Right. I'm just saying, going forward, if we were to say, okay, I'm sure the first time the community sees these numbers, they're going to panic. Sort of like I'm doing right now on the inside. But if we were to start saying, what are we going to really prioritize out of this? This survey would say we should be prioritizing some STEAM or STEM space. The last survey would have said, perhaps that's not where we prioritize square footage, we have to cut square footage. So obviously this is the most recent relevant data that we have, and that does matter, but that seems like a fairly big contrast to me from the last survey, more so than any of the other feedback.
Yeah, and I think the pendulum has sort of swung both directions, because if I recall, during the EFMP process, there was a poll conducted, and it was the opinion of the pollster at the time that STEM would be supported in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And then the survey, you're right, came out and it was the opposite. And so we seem to have swung, to both sides. And, I don't know, but I imagine that if we had put dollars into the survey, if the dollars had been known when the 770 folks who did respond,
those results would have been interesting.
They might have changed.
Yes.
And so we knew what we knew at the time when the survey was put out, and so obviously you have to add that in.
Okay. Thanks.
Would you be able to email us this presentation, because we have the community meeting on the 21st, and whatever data you can get us by that time. So we'll present it to the community and sort through this after we've had time to digest some of it ourselves.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought handouts too, if you'd like
Sure.
them for each one of the 4 options, if it helps you to compare.
Sure. Yes,
Okay,
definitely.
Great.
So, and
Sonali, I was just listening, and the options include bringing the pre-K back to campus. Do we know what that would cost us to bring it back from an operational side? Because right now we're in a co-op, correct?
Right.
Well, we're sharing the
Right,
cost.
right. We would, the teachers would be the same. We have a nurse and a secretary. I'm just thinking out loud as I was going through. We share administrator. So our nurse and secretary offset the cost of an administrator. This would go into an existing building with an administrator. Depending on the enrollment, might cause a need for a part-time administrator or an assistant principal in the building if it were to push it over a certain number. We have a shared early childhood evaluation team, ECAT team, so we probably would need to consider maybe 2 additional staff to be part of it. It would become in-house then. I wouldn't think we'd continue to sharing, so possibly 2 additional staff members to have our own in-house. So I would estimate 4 positions conservatively, just at this point, additional staff, counting an assistant principal administrator potentially coming into there. If that helps out, just for that particular program.
the point of doing this was more to get apples to apples. I mean, just to start weeding it down. And then once we pick a plan, then we could narrow it down. Like, the kindergarten building option that there was a plan that we would decide even, as we went through phases if it didn't come back. But the original amount that was out should include apples to apples because, including it in one plan and not including in others skews that 7 classrooms that you would need.
Oh, yeah,
That's why it's
curious.
like even for the community, I want to tell them that it's not a said and done. It's just more just so that we are comparing everything on the same scale of so all options have STEM, all options have library modifications, all options have EC pre-K coming back in house. Then we can, as we phase it out, once we choose, then we can decide if we want to pull something off or not do it right away, kind of.
No, I was just curious to, see overall how much money we're saving, in the co-op versus bringing it back, so we could look at those numbers too.
No, definitely.
The co-op is more efficient.
Sure.
Right.
Any more questions right now, or you need time to digest?
I needed time to read this over.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah.
As we reconcile the adopted EFMP and the old Plan A or Option A, should we align the space needs to 2018 or should we leave them as they were in 2016? So I'm asking about art, gym, special service, all of those things, enrichment, or do we leave those in the sort of as they were presented in 2016? Because there's a distinct difference between the amount of square footage we're adding to support those needs versus what was presented in 2016.
Can you give us a rough idea as to what's driving that and what the level of difference is?
I think it's, from a percentage basis, Jason, I think it's about 13 to 20% difference in the square footage from the adopted to at least one of the plans. I think the smallest plan. And the current utilization and services being offered are the primary drivers. You'll see a lot of similarities to the shapes of the additions. You'll see more at Middle South, for example, in some of these. You'll see less at Middle North in some of these, more at Elementary North. And so it just, they ebb and flow and they balance, but the utilization of your buildings has continued to evolve. And the types of services and programs that you offer to a greater diversity of student body has played a role.
I mean, I would say adjusted to the 2018. I can't picture it trending back the other direction.
No, and that would, because, that would help us compare apples to apples. I mean,
Right.
essentially, because eventually coming down to, you want to compare everything to the same, as close as possible to your needs. And, like that's the reason why when you asked me the other day, I said, no, put STEM everywhere. We can take it off later, but at least for comparison purposes, that we have it in every plan.
Right.
So we know that dollar amount is accounted for. So, in that way, so.
Yeah, I agree with that so that we can do an apples-to-apples comparison, but it just gives me pause because that, the FMP was supposed to solve our problems for 10 years. Now you're telling us, well, 2 years later, we've got more needs that we didn't consider back then. And so that's like, wait a minute, what happened to our master plan that was supposed to take us 10 years out? Now we have 2 years more of information that we need additional space that we didn't consider 2 years ago. So it's less of a master plan than we thought. So I don't know how do we keep doing this every 2 years, keep adjusting our plan until when?
No.
We have to,
The answer is no.
Exactly. That's my point.
No, it's a great question.
Yeah.
It is.
It's like, I won't qualify my answer the same way that I qualified already, but I will say that, and I was hopefully explicit about this in 2016, that master plans require maintenance, they require update, and normally that milestone is halfway through. Normally that milestone is 50%. So if it's a 10-year plan, you do it at 5. And so another approach is to update it as the phases of construction occur. So if you have a 4-phase plan, you would update it at every phase to ensure your needs were being met. That's why I asked the question. You could always scale back and say, no, our priorities are such that we need to meet our basic core functions, and so we're not going to provide the additional art space. We're not going to provide, I'm making it up, but that's your prerogative.
I think.
Okay, so we'll run it up to the 2018 numbers.
I think we should run it up to the 2018 numbers because once we get the dollar amounts, I mean, just looking at the dollar amounts, once we can start narrowing it down and refining it, as you said, based on that, we might have to pull it back and then we'll have to make those tough decisions if, based on how much dollar amount and how much money we have actually, even if to leverage ourselves, how much can we get to, but at least as far as going out for a plan, let's go for a plan that serves our community, serves our needs, and has the vision that we wanted to have. We might pull it down later, but at least for comparison purposes to going out right now, at least that's my thinking. That you go out for the right one, and then you pull it back.
I agree, and I know you had mentioned it earlier. I just don't know if there was an actual decision made. Could the graders get that option A as adjusted to 2018 and run it back through that rubric before Monday?
And, yeah, we can do A and B or the adopted.
Yeah.
Okay. Please. Thank you.
For both then?
Yeah.
A is almost like New Elementary South, right? It's very similar to
It's
that.
similar.
It's similar, but the building
It
shifts
has
add some
two
complexity.
buildings.
Shifts that got happened.
And it has 2 buildings. It had the kindergarten building
Right.
and the elementary south building, and that's why the construction on each school would be different because you were building 2 buildings in that plan.
Right.
You weren't building one
The Sullivan
building.
Addition and Elementary South,
Yeah,
right.
it was a Sullivan Addition and a elementary south building.
Also, I should note, too, that the distribution of the growth has been updated. So the current thinking on Cuneo and on all these facilities, we had asked the district to help us prioritize how those populations at their estimated size would be distributed through the district. And that was different than when the core team did it, right? So the distribution of students has shifted as well. And much of the growth in previous Plan A was anticipated to go to Town Line because as those transitions occurred as a part of that planning process, that's where the largest capacity existed. And now that's been distributed in a different way, right? So these plans have similar monikers to them, but they have a lot of distinctions from 2016 to today when you really look at each.
Okay.
Thank you so much. If you could give us everything and we'll try to.
Try not to have my head
We'll work
explode.
through. Huh?
Try not to have my head explode.
Oh, wow.
Amen,
Thank you.
Julie. But thank you so much. Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Tom.
Oh, boy.
And if you can take a zero out in those numbers, Tom, that'll be really helpful.
Yeah, seriously, move the decimal point over the
Like
other
decimal
direction.
points, somewhere. The next item on the discussion item is the board agenda software systems. This was an item that was discussed before. We had the two, which was a board docs and board reports, right? So those were the two, and Nick was going to look into both of them more. We had an initial estimates that he had given. So, Nick.
Yes, looking into both options for the board. There is a difference in cost between board docs and the other product. Did make some calls to my colleagues that use both, and what I found with either one of them, whatever they were using, they were satisfied with. It's like,
Good
yeah, we like
news.
what we like. Yeah, it's like, you're not helping me here. But ultimately, reviewing that and going back to original notes, that the board docs is a more robust system, and knowing your plan to try to provide more transparency, more information, maybe utilize the software differently than we currently utilize these options, I would recommend that you go to board docs because it has more features as you grow with what your needs are and what your uses there might be. I think it gives you an option to grow into it, and that way you wouldn't need to change from one software to the next. If you use the other and then you realize we want to do this, now we got to jump over to board docs. I just think take a longer view of this. The board docs provide you more options and more flexibility down the road. You can grow into it and then utilize it as you see fit. I think it's a better investment. Both of them are web-based. I remember they called them two different things. They both are just web-based products and will work fine with our systems, and there's not any no problems there. You're not going to have conflicts with our software or our tools or Apple products or anything like that.
There were two different board docs, right? One was a Pro and one was an LT or something. And which one are you recommending amongst them?
I would go with the Pro. Just get the biggest, the most powerful one there, and grow into that. There's some options there for you. You can go to the Lite and then grow into the Pro, but I think that
there's a huge cost difference between the two.
You're going to want to try some of these and see which features that you like, and not to have the features. You kind of have to have them to work with them. There is a huge cost difference, but I think that the direction you're trying to go with communication and organization and transparencies of these types of documents, I think you can.
Because there's a difference of about almost, it's one is 4 and one is 12, and the one that we didn't choose was 2. So, we already up to the board docs, which is light, and then if we go to board docs Pro, that would be 12. So, I want to make sure that,
Is there a way we can? Do we have webinars, or is there something that we can?
We can invite somebody to come in and do a presentation at one of the board meetings for you, and show you the board docs and show you how it works and what the options are there for you, and then you can decide to go light or go to the full piece. We can do that.
So I'm curious about the audio-visual capabilities, how that works, and then there's the voting piece.
Right.
I'm curious about.
I mean,
go
ahead, sir.
I mean, I don't know, because that's with the Pro. But are these features that we're going to use? So,
that's what I'm like the price difference is huge, and considering if you consider all three of them, it's like there's a 2, there's a 4, there's a 12. I mean, that's a huge price difference and getting. I completely understand what Nick is saying. Is like, yeah, you want to go for the best, and but if you get all the new features, but if you don't use it, then yeah, that's the thing.
And I don't want to.
And my thought was, if you don't have the features, you won't try them. You won't. You're gonna. There'll be some features you'll like as a board. You say, we really think that's important. There's some that you'll say we don't really need to use that. But without it there for you to utilize, I'm not sure that you have a chance to grow into it to determine if that's what you want to use. But I can ask for them to come in and or I could ask them to come in and do a presentation to just do board members and let board members come back and report on that. Maybe do a presentation if you didn't want to do it at a board meeting. But I think that the direction you were going, I felt like the reports for this were great for the people using it. It just gives you a lot of options and features for the direction you seem to want to go in utilizing your software.
Do you know what, like, when is kind of, by when would we have to make a decision or action item so that we can move it at least by the start of, our next school year calendar? So when do you think that timeline for us to make a decision is?
I think, if you could make that by the 1st of August, then you could be ready for the school year coming up.
Ask if maybe this is something that we could put on the agenda for, during the summer.
Yeah, that's right. But I just wanted to know, work backwards from when we have to make a decision so that, we can start getting it for the meeting starting the school year. So, work backwards from that to see. And
I think if you could make a determination in July, have somebody either come in for the board or 2 board members, look at it, get a real sense of the features, and then you can make a decision in July for rolling it out and sometime in August as the school year comes up.
Yeah, I think having a presentation going over the features
that
would be very,
helpful.
very beneficial.
Sure. And even though I was one of the board members that gave consensus to look into this, and I do agree transparency is important, are we sure there isn't any way in-house to securely share this information without paying thousands of dollars extra per year?
I can look and ask the tech department. They're just in some light conversations, if you're using Google Docs, things like that, it's not as robust. It's not, so
Okay.
I'd have to do a little homework on that.
I mean,
where we have that.
I understand in the grand scheme of a $55 million budget, $2,000 is nothing, but we start talking about $2,000, $4,000, $12,000 year over year over year, this better really be worth
bells and whistles and everything.
I mean, I still think we just need to consider that at the end of these presentations, there's still the option to do neither, if that's what it comes down to. Because I don't know if I'm just having sticker shock from tonight's presentation.
Well, sticker shock first. Well, let me work with Board Docs and see about having them. I'll look at several options. Is there like a webinar or something that I could send you a link and you could go through? And then is there having somebody come in and do a presentation either to the board or to board members to review it and have that available for you through, hopefully by the end of July, you've had a chance to go through that and decide which one you think you'd like. And at the same time, I can work with the tech department and see what we maybe have to say.
Thank you.
Seeing it. Is everybody in agreement with that? Kind of?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a letter to the village. This is a letter I had kind of made it. I had sent you a draft over a few days ago. So this was a letter that we have gone a few times as board members to the village trustees and talked to them and asking them for our support. One of the things is, our enrollment is growing. Our revenues are not growing at the same rate as our enrollment is. Space constraint is a completely different thing, but even our operational costs, because of our needs and the diversity of population, is kind of, we are kind of strapped in what we can do and provide. I mean, keeping the. So this was the next step in maybe writing a letter asking for monies from maybe an entertainment tax or maybe a portion of the sales tax from the TIF district, the Melody Farms that would be, and then we could either present it at their board meeting, read it out and present it. A couple of us could go and do it, and we could hand deliver it to each of our trustees and see, to see if they could help us in any sort and form in that way. So you had the draft of a letter, so I wanted to know, what did you think of the idea of doing it? As well as, if you have edits to the letter, definitely we can edit it. You can just send in your edits and we can do it. But more towards the concept of an idea of going and presenting or presenting it to them or delivering the letter to each of our trustees and asking them for monies through a couple of options that we could come up with. Ideas, suggestions, thoughts? Julie?
The concern that I have of that, asking about the entertainment tax, is that at a recent meeting, they've already
Julie,
built.
can you speak louder?
They've
It's like
already
the rain is drowning you out.
They've already contemplated an entertainment tax to fill their shortfall of sales tax revenue that's declined from stores leaving. So I don't know if that's an option for us. I'm more than happy to send it and see. I also think that we should do it in person. A lot of times we've asked for things and we don't get answers and we don't hear back. And I would just like for us to set an example and go ask them face to face. And if they don't want to answer to us, then maybe some of the community members will follow our lead and start going and asking for answers themselves to help solve our problem.
Yeah, I definitely, I agree with Julie in that we should do this in person.
Okay.
So when you say in person at a village meeting, board meeting?
Speak in public comment, maybe, whatever. Or ask to be on the agenda, however the process works.
Because it's easy to ignore a letter that comes in, and then, goes in the, is it circular file bin? But when we show up and we read the letter to them, or we, read our comments, we're a presence, so they have, faces to put to the letter, and I think it makes a bigger impact.
Matt?
You don't get it if you don't ask.
Okay, so ask.
So ask.
Jeff, don't forget.
Robin?
Ditto.
Jason?
Yeah, I think we should all show up at a village meeting and then read this to them in person.
Can we all show up, or can only two of us show up?
Okay.
It's
Jeff?
an open meeting.
It's an open meeting. We can all show up.
Jeff?
Yeah, I agree. We should ask to address the village board on their agenda.
Okay, we can ask for them to be on the agenda. So looks like we are in consensus. So if there's any edits to that draft, send them to me, or send them to Abe, and we can work the numbers and try to make it, as solid as we can. And I'll look at the agendas that they have posted and see what we can kind of, one of them. We'll just, and then if most of us can go, whoever can make it that day, depending on each one's, commitment, then we'll do it.
Then once we finalize this, I think we should read it in entirety at our board meeting as well.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Sure. So we'll read it in entirety, and at the same time, while once the edit comes in, kind of for probably with the June meeting, then I'll look for dates beyond our June meeting, so that where we can try to go and then get it in there. Sounds good?
Yes, thank you for drafting.
Thank you, Sonali.
Okay. That's it for the discussion items as of now. Next is the business meeting. Anybody from the public wishes to comment? 1, 2, 3, gone. We have consent agenda. In the consent agenda, there was a resignation that was hand walked in on Friday. It's in your board packet, so that will be included in the consent agenda items. Does anybody, the consent agenda is board minutes from 4/23, special board minutes from 4/30, closed session minutes from 5/4, closed session minutes from 5/7, the Amex April report, the expenditure report in May, the kindergarten project cost log, the 2018-19 prevailing wage. Oh, we didn't discuss school treasurer appointment of Mr. Abe. Then there's personnel, which is resignation, new hires, and leave of absence. Is there any discussion about any of those?
No.
The school treasurer is a standard thing we do. We just write Abe's name and we sign it. Wes and I sign it, and then that's it.
And he doesn't get any extra money.
No. It does actually say $0 on that.
Yes. That's why he's not getting any extra money.
Thank you, Abe.
So, do we have any discussion or questions about any of those items? Okay. So, do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Second.
Motion by Robin, seconded by Julie. Could I have a roll call, please?
Jason Tron.
Aye.
Julie Simpson.
Aye.
Jeff Bard.
Aye.
Robin Cleage.
Aye.
Wes Pullen, aye. Matt Jacobs.
Aye.
Sonali Patel.
Aye. Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays. The next action item is the paper bid, which Abe just talked about. Is there any discussion on that? Any more questions?
No.
Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve Midland Paper to provide the year's supply of paper to our district at a total cost of $56,583.60. This is for 2,440 cases of 8.5 by 11 virgin white number 20 paper at $23.19 per case.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Motion by Julie, seconded by Robin. Could I have a roll call, please?
Sonali Patel.
Aye.
Matt Jacobs.
Aye.
Wes Pullen, aye. Robin Cleage.
Aye.
Jeff Bard.
Aye.
Julie Simpson.
Aye.
Jason Tron.
Aye.
Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Man almost got 2 votes there.
Chicago. What?
The next is the resolution for transfer of funds to working capital funds. This is on as per needed basis, as Abe has explained. Do we have any questions or discussion on this item?
No.
No? Could I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approve the resolution for transfer of funds to the working capital fund as presented.
I second.
Motion by Robin, seconded by Bess. Could I have a roll call, please?
Jason Tron.
Aye.
Julie Simpson.
Aye.
Robin Cleage.
Aye.
Wes Pullen, aye. Matt Jacobs.
Aye.
Sonali Patel.
Aye.
Jeff Bard.
Aye.
Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays. That's it. There's a precedence report, so that's me. A couple of things. We have our 8th grade promotions at Vernon Hills High School on 29th. We have Julie giving the promotion address for Middle South at 6 p.m. and Robin doing the promotion address for Middle North at 8 p.m. If you are not, if you as in any one of us is not going to be there, just let me know and let Nick know about that. We have a award ceremony in the morning, and both of them are on the 29th at 10 in the morning. So if you can attend one of them at it's an awards, which is the distinction presidential awards and stuff that the students get.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask about that because one thing that so they both are at 10 a.m.?
Yes, it says that. Right,
Okay.
right, Wendy? Sorry.
They used to be at night.
Well, and then I saw one thing in it, but I meant to ask if it was a typo because it said 10 a.m. and then the other school was 1 p.m.
I think they changed it at some time, yes.
Okay. And
It's on the 29th itself. It's the Tuesday, so they are
Tuesday
at
after
10 in the
Memorial
morning, and then we have the promotions at in the evening. So if you can make it, just let us know, or or let Wendy know, and she can just let the principals know that we'll be there.
Okay,
If
I
you
can go to 1
Okay.
on the 29th.
Which one do you want to go to?
Does it matter? I mean, how many people go?
No, but if you're going to one, and if there's only one other person can go, I'll make sure that they go to the other one.
Okay, well, I mean, I have no preference. Should I go to my neighborhood?
Yeah, go to
Middle
middle.
school. Okay, Middle South then.
Middle South? Okay. So West will be at the Middle South promotion. If anybody else is going anywhere, just let
I
me know.
think I'll be able to go, but let me double check when I get home.
Sure. I mean, no hurry. Just let Wendy know or let me know and we can figure that out.
Okay.
We have the community engagement meeting next Monday at Middle School South Gym at 7 p.m. We have a following one again at on the 30th at the Town Line, and we'll figure out once we go through one what is the format, but the next one is there. We have the Institute Day on 25th, which is the Friday, which is Service Awards and Retiree Recognition for Middle South at the Middle South Gym at 10:30. So board members are normally invited if you can make it at that time. If you're coming, just let Wendy know again.
You said 10 o'clock.
10:30 on the Friday in the morning.
Wendy, I will be at that one.
So that is that for now. I think that's all I have.
Okay.
Have I something? No. Do you have something? Superintendent's report?
Sure. I think there's a few items here I'll just review, but congratulations to the track and field state qualifiers who will compete this weekend. Nia H., 100 meters and 200 meter dash. This is for Middle School North. Danielle V., 800 meter run. Riley M. for 1600 meter run. Emma A. for high jump. David M. for discus. Sam G. for shot put. 8th grade girls 4x100 relay and 8th grade girls 4x400 relay. So we've got a lot of talent over there. Appreciate that. A couple of dates real quick, just in case they weren't mentioned. 5:15 Elementary North Town Line and Dual Language 4th, 5th grade orchestra concert at the Town Line Gym at 7. On the 16th is Middle School North Open House at 6:30. On the 17th is Middle School South Open House at 6. On the 17th, Town Line and Dual Language 5th grade Spring Musical at 7. We mentioned the board meeting on the 21st. On the 22nd is Elementary South Aspen Orchestra Concert at the Aspen Gym at 7. The 22nd, Town Line and Dual Language 4th and 5th grade band concert at the Town Line East Gym at 7. On the 23rd, Aspen and Elementary South band concert at Aspen's Gym at 7. Got a lot going on here. 23rd, Middle North Spring Athletic Awards Ceremony. For the current season athletes only, and on the 23rd also Middle South Spring Athletic Ceremonies for the current athletes. 24th Elementary North Band Concert at 7. 25th is the Institute Day that was mentioned. 28th is Memorial Day, no school. 29th is Middle School North 8th grade awards ceremony at 10 a.m. And the 29th also for Middle South, which was mentioned. And then we got our graduations. And on 6/4 is the tentative last day of attendance if we don't get any snow between now and then.
But you never know.
You never know, and some of the hail we got look like big chunks of snow. Thank you very much.
Do we have any topics for future meetings? Any topics to discuss right now?
I have a quick question. It's definitely of almost zero urgency, but before I forget, because you know my memory.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember like a few months ago, you brought up that the Let's Talk app now had a feature where we could reply to anonymous emails, whereas before we could not?
Yeah, they had sent that, and then...
Did we ever decide if we were going to turn on that feature or not?
We didn't discuss it because it's really, we never discussed it. I never even looked into it. That was just an email blast that they had sent us that it could be done. But we would have to discuss, if to anonymous people are we responding, because it's normally anonymous, and then if you're complaining about a third-party thing, is it even valid enough that we need to spend the time and energy doing that? So
I mean, maybe for something over the summer we could discuss whether we want to do that. It's definitely not something I can handle before the end of the school year, but
we can see if we want to reply to anonymous people.
It's just getting harder and harder to know what to do with some of that feedback when we have no way to respond to it.
Yeah, but I think, some of the times I think they don't want a feedback. That's why they put in anonymous. But anyway, that's it for now. We have a closed session. We'll take a break for a little while so people can adjourn, and we can 5-minute break, and we'll meet for closed session back here.
Do we have to make the motion first?
We can let them adjourn, and then we can make the
No, I think we have to
motion
first.
Motion to adjourn.
Not
No,
adjourn.
we don't have to adjourn because they.
I'm not adjourning. Motion to go into closed session.
Right,
Yeah.
you don't need that motion, no.
But you want to
We
take a
don't
break.
need a
You
motion.
Take a break.
Okay.
We are taking a break, and then when we come back.
You can always take a break. You're
Still confuse me with this Robert.
To always take a break.
You can always take a break.
You can always take a break. Feeling wet in my legs.
Yeah. Very nice.
It was all because of my ditto.
I know, you got it right out there.
Cleach.
I know, I was like a great night to transfer those boxes to my car.
I know. I really put them in the
Matt,
car.
Matt, if Betty gives you a packet, can you drop it off
We're
in
still
your
being
mailbox?
recorded, by the way.
Is it close to you? Not here. No. That's okay. Or I'll pick it up from you tomorrow. You know what?